to Creative Vitality Jam Sessions. Here we have intimate conversations with extraordinary dance and theater artists about reimagining creativity and supporting and building community. CVJS and I walk in solidarity and as allies for equality, justice, and respect. President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris preach unity and healing. And I say, let's join in. My name is Helen Pickett, and today's guest is Thomas F. DeFrantz. He is a professor in dance and in the Department of African and African American Studies at Duke University, and he is the director of SLIPPAGE, and we have known each other since 2010. Welcome, Tommy.
Good morning. Hello, hello.
Hello. I'll drink some coffee too. Here we go. I'm assuming it's coffee. Well, I don't know.
It is coffee. It's very nice to see you.
So nice to see you, and I love seeing you in. Where are you?
Yeah, I'll light a candle as we begin our encounter because it's been a practice of mine since we've been in physical distance and in lockdown. And I'm broadcasting from my laboratory, which is the Slippage Lab, and it's on the campus of Duke University. And we are on the unceded ancestral lands of the Shakori, the Eno, and the Catawba people. And so the candle and calling the land acknowledgement helped me ground our encounter even through these virtual sort of realms.
That's beautiful. And I see the Slippage banner right behind you. And in this beautiful lab, which maybe we'll see a little bit more of later. So I always start every interview with the question, what part of the world you're in? But I guess we kind of already covered that.
Well, this is North Carolina in the United States in Durham, and it's an amazingly beautiful part of the country, especially this time of the year. We'll hit 70 today, and it'll be quite sunny. So even though we're in November here, there's been no ice or snow or anything like that yet for the year.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So Tommy, I would like to start with going back into the intro for a moment and mention how your work affiliates with several departments in the university, including theater studies, gender, sexuality, and feminist studies, and computational media, arts, and cultures. You specialize in African diaspora aesthetics, dance historiography, hard word for me, and the intersection of dance and technology. And you are the author and co-author of several books and articles, a professor in several universities. So you're working at Duke, but of course I had the great honor, and I mean that, of studying with you for my graduate degree. So I just had to say that because so many doors were opened through the education that I got to receive and be a part of with you. So that is a big thank you and continual thank you in my life. So you write, to consider an other regard, to wonder at what else there could be, to better understand a point of view, to feel something of how we overlap and diverge. Your creative craft and scholarship strive to open doorways of experience that encourage us to do better, to wonder, to want, to care. Man, this is a paragraph to live by, just right there. So since 2010, you have inspired me in a multiple of ways. God, it's like, is there a question? But in 2010, you have inspired me in a multitude of ways. But in this way, in particular, a constant redefining of the center and the centering of opinion, the elucidation that the center is ever widening, an inclusive and generous place. The center is perhaps cosmos rather than point. Can you explain some of the ways your creative work and research redefines that center place?
Well, thanks so much for that, Helen. I was really struck at the end of that about this idea of point or cosmos and kind of multiplicity of possibilities, which seems so important to me. Sometimes I think we all get stuck in thinking that the path we thought we were on was the only way to move. And then we learn, you know, as artists, as makers, as dancers, performers, that, you know, there's something else that's possible. And this idea of a point in space as being a kind of a destination, you know, maybe we're trying to open away from that. Like there's not necessarily a point we're moving towards, but what if we were moving towards a collective possibility, or as you say, a cosmos? So I guess I want to try to unfold it just from that idea right at the end, because I hadn't thought of that sort of differentiation between point, which might be like an ego or a self, rather than thinking, and this is something I think of in your work that I've seen, you know, over the years, this idea of a kind of collective possibility. What if we dance together? What if I get to know you through our dancing? What if we figure out how to make something, rather than thinking, oh, we're going to get to the point of this piece being premiered in this venue? Like, you know, to move away from that and more towards the possibility of our affiliations. So something like that. I mean, there were a lot of ideas in what you read just now. I don't even know where else to turn, actually.
I loved your writing, and I was just like, man, okay, I'll stop here. No, I'll stop here. But I mean, no, I wanted to read it aloud because one of the things you spoke about a lot in when I was in graduate school with you is, you know, to get yourself written into history. And I just thought what you wrote, you know, that is a way for people to hear how you work and where you work toward and in as an ethnographer, as an anthropologist.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, and there's a way that these values, and there is a value statement. So, you know, we talk about artist statements and teaching statements and, you know, funding statements if you have a company that needs funding like that. But value statements are really important too. And in the Slippage Lab, and then in my daily life, I really do try to pursue these values, and, you know, to be anti-racist, proto-feminist, and queer affirming, you know, it's a challenge, and it requires vigilance. You know, we have to stay on it, stay awake, wake up, get busy, stay in the conversation, and stay attentive to the kind of choice making and process sort of building. So yeah, I do believe in these values, and I believe in trying to pursue them and see where they'll take me, you know, and then the people I'm working with each and every time we meet. So yeah.
And you mentioned lighting a candle.
Yeah.
I feel like if there is, and I find there's many thankful moments within this COVID time. If I hadn't lost all of my work, right, I would have never had the chance, even though I wanted to, and I shouldn't say never, it might have come later. Right. But in this time, I got to get to community, and I got to, and this is something that I want to continue. As you say, the work doesn't stop when the pandemic's over. Do you know what I mean? It's that similar mindset, like, we've done it, it's neat, but it's not.
No, I appreciate that. And something I have been saying to people I've been thinking alongside is just, if we're doing what we did a year ago, there's probably something wrong. We've learned a lot through these last 10 months and through the Black Lives Matters movement, the second wave of social justice, through the election cycle, which was really difficult on our psyches and emotional energetics. And then, of course, through physical distancing and losing our work. I mean, I had performances in Amsterdam and in Israel, and, you know, all of that is pushed off and tentatively now scheduled for 21, but we'll see.
We'll see, yeah.
We'll see, yeah.
So, let's see, Slippage. I'm just going to read what you wrote. I get to this question sooner. So, Slippage, performance, culture, technology. a research group that explores emerging technology in live performance, for which you received an Outstanding Research Dance Award from Dance Studies Association in 2017. You write, Slippage believes in our shared capacity to do better, to engage our creative spirit for a collective good that is, as you said, anti-racist, anti-homophobic, proto-feminist, and queer affirming. As a research group, do you, as a collective, find subjects and inspirations to research and construct? Or do you find the topic and then reach out to the community? And then I have a few other questions along this, but let's start there.
No, that sounds great. That makes sense. So Slippage was formed when I was teaching at MIT, and I taught there for a long time. I enjoyed my time there. And one of the big questions I had, though, as an artist working in such an engineering sort of environment, was how to begin from the questions of relationship and creative desire rather than from the questions of technology and capacity. Like, we could make a robot do something like a human, and then the old way was to kind of put that into a piece somehow. And we really wanted to make Slippage begin from a place of not doing that, but going, what are the questions we're concerned with? And then later on, figuring out what sorts of technologies would support how we wanted to explore this idea and share it out with an audience or a public. So we definitely try to start with the actual themes that we're working with, or the concerns that we want to explore. And then the technology interfaces are developed after that. When we figure out what it is we want to try to do, then we figure out how we want to try to do it in terms of technology and interface design. So that's definitely the order. So we start with what is it we're concerned with and we want to research and better understand and figure out how to tell a story about. And then we work on developing the actual ways to do that. Now, that said, of course, every once in a while, there's a technology that gets invented and then we figure out that it goes into a piece. So that's happened along the way, of course. Some things we developed, like the synth ball, was something that was developed by two postdoctoral associates in the lab. And it's this great sort of, it's essentially a ball, like a small, what is it? It's like maybe it's a little bit bigger than a shot put.
Okay.
And it has some Arduino devices inside of it. So it has an accelerometer and it has a gyroscope and it has some Wi-Fi sort of connectivity. And then as you move the ball, you can rearrange sound and light in relationship to the space. So it's maybe like some of the devices that you're quite used to working with yourself, Helen. But we figured out where that went in terms of a piece we were developing on white privilege. And it wasn't, a kind of like natural or obvious sort of way for those devices and that work to meet, but it ended up being just right for that particular piece. So, maybe the questions of white privilege were already circulating in the lab as this technology was being developed. So
I do want to ask, though, when you talk about we, you're talking, so a part of it, do you reach out to a group of people when you say we? Is this because the slippage isn't always the same group of people? It's project based, isn't it?
It's very much project based, and yes, so it's kind of I like to think of that old there was an old TV show called Mission Impossible, and at the beginning of it there would be someone looking through the files like, we know what the job is, who do we need for this job? So there's quite a bit of that in Slippage. There's a kind of loose core. There's probably a dozen people, I would say, are Slippage affiliates kind of always, if you will. So they're always around. And when a new project presents itself, they're the people I call and say, hey, here's what's happening. How are you? What do you think of this? And, half the time those people say, yes, I want to work on it. And half the time, no, I'm doing something else. I'm busy, but good luck. And here's 5 people to call and think of bringing in.
Okay.
Then because we're cited in a university in the United States, there are also undergraduate and graduate students and then postdoctoral affiliates who come through the lab. Yeah. And I try to keep it very much by choice. So I don't really go hunting folks down. I let people come and knock on the door. It helps me feel a little better about the ethics of our relationship, to know that they already have a desire to be in a container that's anti-racist, proto-feminist, and queer affirming. So I don't want to have to indoctrinate anyone to those values. I want them to move towards those values.
That's beautiful. The choice, yeah, that word. That's yeah. So let's see. Can you please describe? Oh, yeah, you described one of the projects. Great, the Genesis. Yeah. So I do along those lines for rehearsals and. Well, okay, here's a question. Have you had a project during this time?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Because
so
how did those rehearsals then and the show manifest?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, our lockdown here in North Carolina started in March, and I'd actually just finished a show at Gibney in January, a new show, which we were nominated for a Bessie. We just found out over the weekend, which is great. So I actually had moved into a cycle of writing. So, Slippage does a lot of things. I also write a lot. And I had moved into a cycle where I was going to write for the next 6 months and then do some older performances that had been booked already. So, everything stopped, but I did get a commission to do an older performance for a festival in Vancouver, Canada. And so what we had to do was film the performance here in the lab and then edit it very lightly, because I didn't want to do film editing. That wasn't what I was interested in for this project. And then we sent them the file. So, it wasn't a new project. We have not figured out how to start a new project for lots of reasons here. It hasn't been in the front of my sort of creative space or energetic, ability. So, that just hasn't happened yet. But we did film an older project and shared out into a festival in a film format, and then did a live Q&A after the performance. And the festival ran it on their site for a month or so, I guess, and then they took it down. So that's been our sort of realization of something since March. We will start something new in the spring, though. So things are shifting. Now it's November. We'll start addressing an older project that I had wanted to revitalize anyway, and we'll start working on that, in January.
So yeah, that was the other question about the upcoming project. So there is something you're working on in January for the spring.
Yeah, not for this spring. So our process is really super long. So we think of ourselves as a research collective, and things take as long as they take. Sometimes we get a commission and there's a date, and that's that, and we make a piece. But typically our own projects take about 5 years. So in 2018, we did a first workshop of a project about redlining and political gerrymandering. Because in North Carolina, these things are very prevalent. There were all these Supreme Court cases you might have heard about, where districts were drawn according to political party whims. So we wanted to explore that and try to get in there. So we did a first draft of this piece called "These Borders That Keep Me Down." And it was definitely a first draft, but it was, strong when there were a lot of great ideas in it. So now we're going to go back into that piece, really take it apart, develop it, work on it. And then we'll figure out when it's time to show it. Probably 22, I would say. I think it'll be another couple of years.
Oh, beautiful. Well, you heard it here first. No. Oh, God. You write, I work to demonstrate, explore, enliven, to collaborate, collude, collide with others, their ideas, and their senses of self. This image of collaboratively colliding, it's immediate. It's something that's so, I see so much dance in that, and so this image of collaboratively colliding, so as to move closer together, to, as you write, create an opportunity to care. We have experienced life and work together, you and I, as professor, MFA candidate, and as fellow artists. And this holistic approach, which is at once generous and provocative, is very conducive, in my humble opinion, to creativity. in creating opportunities to care, what specific ways did art making emerge for you? Did this opening that is created with care invite a more symbiotic level of creation? I'll stop there. There are other questions, but I'll go on after.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, I hope so. You say, does it create a more symbiotic way to kind of be in creativity? And I would hope so.
Mhm.
I do think of art making as storytelling and sharing, which is maybe like teaching, because I spend a lot of my energetic time teaching, as you know. And I was thinking of we did a theoryography together. So there was a container, the really quick container where there's some text,
Heidegger's
and it's
hammer.
this sort of, exactly, it was Heidegger's hammer. So we had an idea we wanted to
Outside.
explore. And then there was this open field of play, as you recall. And it did hopefully give us a chance to regard each other differently, those of us who are performing together, and figure some things out, and to kind of model that towards a kind of larger scale would be amazing. We don't do that because, as you've already mentioned, we do project-based stuff. One day we're creating a sound score for a ballet for Dancing of Harlem. The next day we're commissioned to do something for a museum in Detroit, but it's project-based. It would be an amazing thing, though, to craft a possibility for people to keep growing and caring and wondering alongside each other in the US. I mean, this happens in other parts of the world, but in the US it's much harder to do because of the way our structures are around dance and performance. But I do hope it's holistic. I like that idea, and that it allows people to figure out who they want to be now among each other. And that just seems really urgent to me.
Yeah, I agree. It feels urgent to me too. And I remember working on Heidegger's hammer, and I remember that we had a few, so let's call them improv rehearsals beforehand, right?
Yeah.
That just to actually get a sense of each other in space, the people that, that group. And I, as you know, improv near and dear to my heart, but this felt very, it was quiet in a way. And I mean quiet by the way that when something gets quiet, that is known, but not in the static known way. It was an agreement. And there's that quietness that comes through agreements, especially in improv. So much air is opened up for choice. And that's something I really felt with Heidegger's hammer. Now, we also had this, 2-year relationship, the people that were in Heidegger's hammer in the theoryography and everything. But that is something that I remember. And I remember one moment really distinctly where I held out my hand like this. And I was on the floor, crouched down, and you came over and sat in this part of my hand. And we just sat there for a while, not making eye contact. We just sat there. And then I gave you the teeniest little up, and that made us swirl again. But it's that quietness, that agreement that I find that's care.
It's really lovely, and I agree with you. I do think that dance offers us this opportunity to reassess how we understand care. And it's why it's so important to the social justice protests right now that are still going on, as they must. We dance at these protests to demonstrate care. And then in that moment that you're remembering, it was a caring towards our shared possibility, as well as an acknowledgement of our difference. You didn't expect me to do that. I saw an opportunity and made the best of it I could in that moment. And then when it was time to move on, we moved on. And I do think that that's, again, our sort of opportunity in life, is to care towards each other, to think alongside each other, to make things, glorious things alongside each other, and also be able to move on as we need to, and reorient and face other directions and do other kinds of things.
And carry it forward.
And carry it forward. And carry it and share it with, you know, the children, the grandchildren. It's not all about kids, but to share it with other people who are not the people we always are with. Yes.
Yeah. Let's see if we went into this. Has this work reshaped? I think this is self-evident, but I'm going to ask it. Has this kind of work reshaped the pathways of your work?
Yeah, so the biggest thing for me about sort of, and directing is a funny word. I mean, I do direct the projects because there tends to have to be someone who can answer the logistical questions along the way and make some determinations about what will go and what, probably can't go for whatever reason. But this idea of saying choreographer as though it's, for me, as though it's exactly a kind of like, I'll tell you what to do, or I will set the conditions and nothing else must ever happen. I definitely don't do that. So it definitely has allowed me to release into a kind of collective possibility of making stuff and being less interested or committed to thinking that I need to be sort of know myself as a choreographer. So for me, it's shifted how I think about what it is to make stuff with other people. And, as always, that's not for everyone. And I wouldn't say that it was at all. For me, though, it's definitely shifted how I think about those kinds of roles and responsibilities. And then the stuff that we make, of course, is all experimental, and that gives us a certain kind of like room to play, because the experiments, as we know from the sciences, mostly fail. Very few experiments actually succeed and give us results that we can count on, but that's why we experiment. So that's been a great thing for me to understand artistry as a sort of scientific experimentation. That's been a big shift since from when I was really young and thought I wanted to make dances in a certain kind of way. Now I really live in a different kind of world of creative making.
You bring up an excellent point of scientific experiments mostly failing. And I believe that is one of the, I grew up in Europe, basically dancing there, and that is a fundamental part of art.
Yeah.
Fail. Ding, 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 ding. And also not, so what is failure? What is success?
Sure.
That has to also be in there. So like it's so important.
Oh, it's very important.
So important,
and we have it. Yeah, we do have it in different sort of pockets in the US, but they're pockets. So in the Black cultural worlds where I tend to live, we have this a lot. Like you go to the nightclub or you go to the party or you're at the family reunion, there's a lot of like, yeah, I didn't get that quite right. And then every once in a while, there's something that it comes through and you're like, yeah, that was it. I got it. I can do the dance or do the step, or I can feel sort of great about a kind of connection. Mm-hmm. And then, we see this in a lot of work that hews close to African diasporic aesthetic principles. This idea of a kind of like looking towards spirit sort of being enlivened somehow through the performance. So yeah, there's pockets of it, but it's definitely not the way that a general public thinks about dance. The general public tends to be told in the US, it should think that something's good or bad. It won or it lost. It's a competition, so that's, yeah, we're all working against that. Yeah. We are.
Well, also a lot of dance in the US tells people how to feel.
And there's that too. Yeah. You should feel this way, right? Yeah. And things are much more complex than that. And hopefully we're starting to understand a little better that things are more complex than that.
Yeah. Let's see. And then there's one more part with the collision with others' ideas and senses of self. Going back to this, can a new idea of center be born?
Oh, right. I love that. I'm going to change my camera. Is that allowed?
Oh, I love it. Oh, yeah. Okay. New idea
The new
center was just
center.
born.
This is the new center, and it's a sound-based center.
That's so
So
cool.
as the interface hears me, it tries to make me one, but I'm many.
Don't centerize me.
But these are the kinds of things we're able to do here in the Slippage Lab. And we do play with this idea of center and place and cosmos and distributed sort of identity, distributed presence. We're concerned with questions of dance in terms of being largely a screen-based event. We've been working in VR recently, which is complicated. And you know, one of the problems with virtual reality systems now is just that the headgear is really not dancey. Like, it's not fun. You put this thing on, it's just like icky. You know what I mean? It's not easy. It's not lightweight. It's not really available yet. But inside these worlds, there are these sort of allowances of affordances of space. Yeah. Inside VR spaces. So you know, we're trying to think about that now, and like, what could that look like, and how could that feel, and what else could be available. So yeah, thinking in terms of what else could there be, rather than some sort of regret about what there used to be, and we don't do that anymore. Yeah, definitely that.
Yeah. Tommy, you are consultant for the Smithsonian Museum of African American Life and Culture, where you contribute concepts and voiceovers for permanent installations on Black social dance that opened with the museum in 2016. You are currently working on a manuscript about Black social dance. Did your work with the Smithsonian in part inspire the idea for this book, or vice versa? I think the versa of the Burke was happening. So, or vice versa. What timeline does the research cover? Sorry, I had to. I'll go there and then I'll ask the last question. But
oh my God. Yeah, so working on the Smithsonian project was really a high point to me, of a career as a researcher in that kind of way, like an archival researcher of historical documentation of African American dance. And you know, when I was working on a PhD at NYU in performance studies, that's what I was up to. I was researching older forms of African American performance, and especially dance. So then to be called or tapped to work with the Smithsonian was just like amazing. And I didn't really understand how I would feel about it until I finally went after the museum opened. And it is a permanent installation where you'll see this video that's amazing, that the team at the Smithsonian Film Channel made, but you'll hear my voice reading a text that we devised together, sort of narrating some of the many ways that social dance is so important in African American cultural life. So, you know, I had no idea it would be that, and it just felt really, it feels really great. Like, I feel like that research really gets to live somewhere and hopefully help some young people rethink how important social dance is to us. And I guess the idea for the book, it did help me think, oh, I do need to write this book, because I need to kind of organize a longer form of telling these stories as I understand them, that can be shared out. And the book is still a really great technology or form to use to tell long stories about information or ways that people interacted with each other. So yeah, so that's coming. And it's not a historical sort of naming of dances and putting them in periods. It's not that. It's more of a kind of telling of, again, the how and the why these dances matter to us so much. Why is it that the Cupid Shuffle is the dance that protests keep grabbing onto over the last 6 months? And, you know, if you've watched any of the protests or participated in them, you know, we tend to get to a Cupid Shuffle somewhere along the way. So then what is, again, that technology, and I will use that word, what is the technology of that dance that is allowing people to feel connected to each other, but also to this idea of social justice and liberation, sort of corporeality, liberated bodies through dance and dance expression. So, you know, I feel like there's a great story to be told there, and I'm giving it a go.
Good. Beautiful. Okay. Thank you for that. You have been making work and publishing scholarship for 20 years now. Your first book was published in 2004, is that right?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Dancing Revelations, Alvin Ailey's embodiment of African-American culture was in part of our syllabus. Looking into these years, how has process shifted for you? In what ways have you reimagined process? What areas surprised you? And what areas, if any, did you at first dismiss and then find out they were key to future doors opening?
That's a great question. It's a little complicated too. I guess the dismissal, you know, dancers, we tend to sort of be concerned with scrutiny, like, what are we doing wrong? And, you know, what have I fucked up somehow? And that just tends to be a kind of place we go because we're so concerned with how our gestures matter, you know, and how our nervous system is propelling itself towards a possibility. So, yeah, you know, last year, I don't know if this is answering, but I'll tell a little story. I had a sabbatical from 18 to 19. And what that means in the US university system is you get time to do your own research without having to do stuff at your home institution. And it's an amazing thing. Everyone should have it. They should have it in every career there ever was, because it's like reset time. And what I decided in that time, Helen, was that I really needed to perform in someone else's work. So a couple of opportunities, you know, presented themselves, weirdly enough, and then I said, okay, yes, I'm going to say yes to these two different things. And I got to work as a performer in companies, you know, by two artists' work who I respected and admired and was curious about. And I got to sort of re-understand or reassess kind of what all of this was doing for me and how I was working with it now. So that was something that I think I had sort of discarded before, but something about 5 years ago said, no, 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 you need to work with someone else's eye and intellectual desire, and then figure out how to move closer to them. Because when you're directing your own company, making your own projects, everyone's moving to you. Even if you're, you know, kind of staying out of it, as I tend to, they're still moving towards me. So this was really, really important for me to understand how to get wrapped up in someone else's concerns in that kind of intimate way. So yeah, that's something I would say is like, you know, finding a way to go back to something that was important 20 years ago. You know, I was performing more, of course, and then to reassess kind of how that works now. That was the thing that was really an amazingly special sort of opportunity. So I was really glad I did it, even though my body was like not happy. I had to add that part. My body's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but man, the recovery time, right?
It was all great until the applause was done, and I was like, oh my God. No, teasing, but it was really, really an amazing thing to do. So for me, that kind of connecting to performing and in someone else's wheelhouse was super important.
And shifted your view of process. Yeah.
Very much so. It helped me understand again how to hopefully make better space for collaborators, and also kind of, you know, to understand those shifting lines where sometimes you want someone to say this, not that. And other times you want to play and play and play and discover for yourself.
Yeah.
You know, so I better understand kind of how that worked for me, and maybe have some other strategies now to share with collaborators moving forward.
Yeah. Thank you. Beautiful. So these three questions I ask every person on the show. Can you share, and they're fluffy, but well, two of them are, one of them is not. Can you share a favorite or impactful memory or memories from your creative life or life?
Impactful or creative. I guess, what flashed in my head weirdly was a performance I had the opportunity to share in Cape Town, South Africa. And it was just such an unusual event. I have no idea why this came to me first, honestly, when you asked that question. Absolutely not. Maybe because we were talking about performing, because this was some time ago, maybe 15, 18 years ago. And I had been invited to share something at, weirdly, a ballet competition. So, when they have the gala, then they just have like other people perform and then they announce the winners. So I think the first half were the final, sort of competitive dances. And then there were the other people. Well, I was one of the other people. And I performed a bit of a work about Thelonious Monk that was an experimental tap piece. And I just remember being backstage by myself in the opera house, preparing to go out and perform for an audience of people I knew no one there, which was really unusual. It's a really out of body feeling to know absolutely no one who was, among the many hundreds of people who were there in the audience. And then to kind of channel Thelonious Monk's, my understanding of what he had been up to and the ways we had crafted this particular piece that I performed for like 8 years for a really long time. And to bring that kind of energetic vibration into that space, it changed me. So that's the one I'm thinking of. There was something about offering out that solo in that unusual circumstance and having it be about, one of these geniuses of African-American music and creativity that really did transform how I understood possibility.
So when you said change, you just further elucidated. So how you understood possibility. And that was because of this space where you knew no one and you were channeling and working with Monk and this genius of his music. And so in another translation, it sounded like doors were, or a door or doors were opened for you to, and that's what possibility, I'm just saying it a different way.
Oh, you're beautiful.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's now that we're, invested in land acknowledgements and understanding who comes with us, that's what it did for me.
Yeah.
It helped me understand that who comes with me matters.
Yes.
And so that Thelonious Monk was there, maybe, I never got to meet him and I don't want him to be somewhere he doesn't want to be, but my idea of him is there. But then my grandmother's there. And I was able to bring all this to these people who I didn't know. And I think before the performance, I didn't think I could do it. That's part of it.
I was going to say,
in the doing of it, I realized, as you say, these doors are open and it is possible.
So what I also hear is that they supported you through a certain amount of fear. And I'm going to use that word because it's so important for young people, especially now. It's a lot of fear in this time, and young people on the cusp of a career that has been, pandemicized, you know what I mean? And so Thelonious Monk and your grandma were the foundation where you could push past a fear. Yes or no?
Yes, bringing, and I want to open it out for all of our friends. It's like, bringing the people with you. Who needs to come with you, and who's with you already? And sometimes there are people who are, the bad teacher who said nasty things to you, but they can also propel us to this great achievement and to this great ability to share in this kind of profound way. And I'm totally on board with how you said it. I'm co-signing, and that's what that particular performance did in a certain way. It's kind of like a pivot point for me as I think about time and my own sort of stuff. Like that was a pivot where other things became possible because of it.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Do you have an insight or daily inspiration inspiration that you can share about living a creative life?
Stay curious.
Yeah.
You know, there are those ridiculous beer commercials that say "stay thirsty," but there's something inside of them that's not wrong. Like it's staying curious. It's picking up a book pretty much every day. I mean, I read a ton. I think you knew that about me. You know, last night I found a book on a shelf that I hadn't noticed in a while. It's about Frantz Fanon, but it's a study from the 1970s. And it's a very odd little book, but I'm enjoying reading it. I started reading it yesterday and I thought, oh, this is great. Stay curious. A creative life is about maybe, I think, nurturing creativity and then channeling that towards intentionality. So then how can you be intentional about the things you're curious about? But first, you got to stay curious.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yes. Thank you. In supporting and building, last question. Oh, that looked like, and in my peripheral vision, in my peripheral vision, that looked like an old-fashioned milk bottle, you know, that got delivered. I just saw, no, it was because it's this white thing, and I thought, he's drinking a gallon of milk. No, what?
This is my milkman dance.
Okay. It kind of looks like you're milking the cow and dancing. Nice.
And why wouldn't you?
Why not? In supporting and building a more equitable dance community, what are some specific daily practices we could be active with?
That's such a great question. Where would I start? There are these two younger researchers writing an anti-racist dance history textbook, and I'm so excited about it. And they asked me if I would write like just a tiny little thing for them. So, you know, I drafted up a little thing earlier this week, and I was thinking about anti-racist activity being caring towards not the people in the center of the frame, but one of the things I wrote was the custodian who cleans the studio, the person who sits at the desk and registers the students and makes sure that the teachers are paid their salaries. Like, that's a way to start to decolonize and deconstruct these systems and hierarchies, to care and pay attention to the web of activity that produced this thing that we love.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what I would offer out, to care towards the people who are doing the work to support the thing that we all get excited about, which is the dancing, but there are lots of people who are helping make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I equate that to leaving the ballet company and standing, as I said, on my own 2 feet. I really I need to feel, and I look back and I think, wow, I had no clue about everything that goes on so I can dance on stage. And that's a really important moment, I think, in an artist's life. That web, like you said, the web, the foundation, that extremely strong spider web, you know, it's so strong and resilient. Yeah. Tommy, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting us into your lab for this talk and for this really generous conversation. I can now, I love you. Oh,
I wanted to show you the whole lab.
Yeah, gorgeous. Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah. Oh, hi. Gorgeous. Beautiful. Wow.
And I wanted to say, Helen, that these conversations that you're conducting are part of the web of support as well. Like, we build this web and it keeps spinning and growing and expanding as it must, not to take over anything, but because our curiosity does expand and our abilities and possibilities are limitless. Yeah. We get in each other's way, in our own way sometimes, but there's a lot that still needs to be done, and let's keep going.
Let's keep going. Yes. Yes, let's keep going. Again, thank you so much. And I have slippage.org as a place for people to go to find out more about you and the work you do and the people you work with and the technology. What other Is there, so Duke, they could go to Duke as well, right? And find out more. And do you have a website? Do you have something else that people can find out more about you?
Yeah, the Slippage website has all my stuff too. So
Right.
you'll find like, yeah, publications, documentation of performances, residency projects that we've had here in the lab. So that's also a possibility. I'm sure some of your listeners or viewers will at some point be affiliated with the lab if they'd like to. So yeah, the Slippage website's the best place to go.
Great. Okay. So now we just, it's kind of the end. So I'm going to say you can find a short bio from Tommy in the description box below the video when it gets uploaded later today. And we have new guests every week. The next guest will be Angel Corella, the artistic director of Pennsylvania Ballet.
Yes.
And I just want to now say my thanks at the end of every show. So I'm going to start with thanking Gracie Spina, the extraordinary intern. I call her little, I shouldn't say diminutive. She is a ninja in technology. She helps me get this program up, and she is just super talented young woman. So thank you, Gracie. Thank you to our dance community for holding us up, you know, bouncing on that beautiful web, holding us up, and also that keeps widening with that hope. And I have to say, thank you, Tommy, for being on this show. It's just, there's a selfish part of this. I get to see my friends with this show and talk, you know, face to face. And you're the epitome of reimagining. So let's keep reimagining together of our art, and hope to see you sooner than later.
Very soon, I hope.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.